Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's a famous saying, and it's good to think about it. When we think of power, we might think of the government or the police, people of authority. But is it really that simple? Today I want to ask, what is power? Is power simply the privileges of having assigned a position in hierarchy, or can power be obtained by other means? My take is as follows. Power dynamics are everywhere, even when you think there isn't. In any friendship there is a power dynamic. This power dynamic can be caused by socioeconomic factors, but also a lot of other things. In any friendship there are usually forms of transactions, for example gifts, money, or in the form of information. When you tell a friend a secret, or about trauma that you've experienced, or that you're gay and you're not out of the closet yet, this creates a power dynamic. Information can be used against you. In this video I'm going to talk a lot about power abuse. A lot of heavy topics will be discussed, including but not limited to manipulation, emotional abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse, grooming, and cults. In this video I will make a lot of references to cults, because cults are a good example of how power corrupts, but also that it isn't the only thing that can corrupt. To explain my example about using information to manipulate, a lot of cults have a system where they will disconnect you from your community if you decide to leave the cult. And often this is done by showing the community all the dark secrets they have about you. They might even make stuff up. But the information that they have on you will be used against you one way or another. In relationships this can work similarly. When you are discussing a dispute or trying to negotiate in an issue and you have information, there is a power dynamic. There are a lot of people in this world who would use information as revenge when an argument leads to a fight. And knowing this, it would feel unwise to upset someone who has information about you that you don't want to be leaked. And you might be more inclined to agree with things that you do not feel comfortable with. Abusive relationships can grow organically without either party realizing, because power dynamics are in every relationship and power corrupts. As in the previous example, the person who is not comfortable with agreeing but does it anyway will most likely say to themselves, "It doesn't matter, it was my fault for telling them in the first place. I just gotta keep my mouth shut," etc. This is why I strongly believe that in order to realize if you are in an abusive relationship is to ask yourself, do you do things for this person that you don't feel comfortable with, but also don't want to upset this person by telling them? Now there are situations in a relationship where you just gotta suck it up and accept that there are certain traits of a person that isn't compatible with you. But if you feel like there are things you do that really make you uncomfortable and you don't feel safe to speak up about it, you might want to ask yourself what it is that doesn't make you feel safe to say it. If your answer is that they might get upset, ask yourself why them being upset is more important than your boundaries. If you are in an environment where it isn't safe to set boundaries because your boundaries make the person upset, you might be in an abusive relationship. To come back on my point about abusive relationships growing organically, in a relationship where there is a power dynamic, both parties are usually aware either consciously or unconsciously. In the case of the latter, they might act based on this dynamic without realizing. In a lot of fights you will hear one of the parties use negotiation or leverage with this dynamic. They might say, "Where would you be without me? I am the one paying the bills," or "How can you do this after all I've done for you?" In these examples, the power dynamics are money and support respectively. Just because one person is paying all the bills doesn't make it right to use it as leverage in a fight. Just how having always been there for someone doesn't make you free from unwanted behavior being criticized. On the other hand, the person knowing that they are in the powerless side of the power dynamic might do this negotiation in their head for the person in power and not even mention certain uncomfortable situations because they feel like they owe them so much. This way, the person in power learns that they can get away with it and never question it. They don't question if it bothers the powerless person. So in this example, the person who oversteps boundaries of the powerless person does this without bad intentions, because the boundaries can't even be set because of the power dynamic. This is actually a big part of grooming. The first weeks or months of grooming, the groomer will shower the victim with affection, gifts and support, also called love bombing. Vulnerable people, especially bullied people, will really enjoy this attention and feel that they are special, they feel validated. They will be trained to need this attention, and their self-worth will be in a big part dependent on the attention of the groomer, which ultimately leads to not wanting to disappoint the groomer and do things for them that they don't feel comfortable with. This is a very simplistic way of explaining how grooming works. I will leave links to documentaries in the description that I use for research, and will further explain the concepts that I talk about today. I've said the word relationship a lot, but maybe we should take a step back and look at what a relationship is. When I talk about relationship, I'm not just talking about romantic or friendships. There are some relationships that inherently have a power dynamic, like a child with their parent or an employee with their boss. Parents might say to their kids, to do something because I am your parent, which is literally using the power dynamic as a leverage to negotiate. Now, I understand that sometimes negotiating with a child can be frustrating, but I believe that as a parent you have to explain to a kid why it is that they can't do something. If your best argument is that you are their parent, then you are using your power dynamic as a form of manipulation without even being able to explain to the kid why their wish isn't granted. And all they learn in this situation is that they should fear you, not the topic of negotiation. As soon as the kid leaves the house, they will do the things that they only didn't do out of fear for their parents, because they were never taught a good argument to not do those things. In the case of employee-boss power dynamic, this one seems pretty obvious to me, but I will explain why this power dynamic can be used for abuse anyway. We live in difficult times. It is not easy to get a job, and a lot of the people have to stay in a job they hate. Already you see that money is very good negotiation method to make people do things they do not feel comfortable with. In fact, it's not even negotiable. Able people of the working class have to work. This is something that under capitalism you cannot question. Not every able person of the working class is highly educated, and even if you are, it can be difficult to find a job that you enjoy. Being stuck in a job that you do not enjoy is something we all take for granted and part of life. I have a lot to say about this, but not today. People are dependent on their income, their life depends on it, and when you are in that position, especially for the low educated and the marginalized, you are usually stuck in the job that you have. This creates a situation where speaking up to people higher in the hierarchy can backfire in such a way that your life depends on it. Because if you get fired, you don't get money and you don't get to pay rent. In a sense, work environments work a lot like a cult. The lowest tier in the hierarchy has nothing to say, or at least speaking up to the higher-ups is frowned upon and can get you fired, or excommunicated as they do in cults. And cults is often encouraged to get higher in the hierarchy, And when you do, you get taught the same kind of abuse or manipulative behavior that they used to do on you. However, you've gotten desensitized to it because you've always told yourself that it's just part of having a job, and if you get punished, it's probably your fault. Climbing in the hierarchy also is very rewarding because it comes with a pay raise, making you feel that being in a position of power gives you status, and in a sense it does. You have more money than the people below you in the hierarchy, you have more privileges than them, and you can tell them when they are doing something that is not in the benefit of the company, which also is a tactic that cults use. Cults will always remind you that whatever you do should be in the interest of some greater good or goal that the cult stands for. In work environments there is a lot of abuse, whether that be emotional, financial, physical or sexual. A lot of this abuse we don't even know about because employees don't speak up because of the power of the higher ups have. And even if you take the example of a company like Blizzard, where a lot of people have come out and say that there is a lot of abuse, the official statements that the company makes on this abuse is to save face, never to take accountability, which is very similar to official statements we've seen by Scientology or Jehovah's Witness. And this applies to any organization. An organization has a goal, whether that is to help people or help the CEO become insanely rich. The employees or volunteers are expected and manipulated into protecting the status quo of the organization. Usually the status quo is decided upon by management, and without some way of unionizing or democracy in the organization, there is no way you as an employer get to have a lot of input in the organization. Some people will be promoted to functions because of their contributions and insights they have given to the organization and are able to climb in the hierarchy that way. But this is only done when the contributions are beneficial to the goal of the organization. In the case that making the CEO rich is the goal, ideas to make the conditions for employees better will only be considered if it doesn't cost money, and significant improvements for employees are usually only achieved by unionizing or strikes. The propaganda that we have against unionizing is only because management can't have an organization that thinks of the condition of employees, because what the employees need will ultimately come down to money, and so it is in the interest of the management to spread propaganda and threaten you to be fired if you do unionize, which sounds pretty culty to me. Other goals could be to help people, like mental hospitals or the police. There's a lot of abuse and brutality coming from both organizations toward marginalized people, and both have in common that they believe they are helping society. This is not just a power dynamic or hierarchy, but also a certain savior complex where they can sleep better at night by telling themselves that their abuse is just tough love or ultimately for the greater good. These people are taught in their education that abuse is sometimes or often necessary to serve the greater good. And just like in Scientology, the members of the Sea Org don't question that abuse is part of their job, because they have been brainwashed to think that it's a good thing. They don't see it as abuse, they see it as fair punishment or just consequences for one's actions. Scientology, mental hospitals and the police spread the propaganda that if someone in authority punishes you, it is because of your own wrongdoing, no questions asked. I think that we like to point at cults and say it would never happen to us. We would never be groomed into a cult. But I honestly think that a cult is a spectrum, and that any for-profit organization is somewhere on that spectrum. A for-profit organization will never tell you at a job interview what their track record is with abuse. If they believe that you are beneficial to the company, they will try to lure you in and negotiate about your income. Often with similar tactics that groomers use. They say that we are a family to make you feel part of community. They might have Nerf guns and show you how quirky and cool they are. They might boast about their cafeteria and say that they have the best lunches. And it's only that you've been working there for a year that you start realizing that a lot of the promises they made are just for PR. We don't have a 9-to-5 mentality, it's just gold speak for that you're going to work over hours. Also, saying that you would never join a cult is a bit naive. There are many cults active today all around the world, and they are very good at finding your vulnerability. Where a work environment doesn't need this, they know you come for money. But a cult usually preys on concepts that people are struggling with, help you with that to varying success, and then you start believing that they can help you with more, or that you want to contribute to the cause. In USA there is a cult called The Group. They are all over America, and they present themselves as drug rehabilitation program. It pretends to be a 12-step program where you are helped with your addiction. But there have been people recently opening up about the abuse in there and how it affected them. Ultimately, it was all about money. The parents paid a monthly fee for the program, and the kids were in the cult for entertainment. I'm not going to explain here how that cult worked, but I will share a documentary about The Group in the description. So this cult preys on kids that have drug addiction, and all cults will find their niche to prey on. Scientology is a bit different in this. They feel like they can cure anything from mental health problems to cancer. Multi-level marketing preys on people in poverty because they promise a lot of money. It is easy to say that you will never fall for any of these, but all people will come to a point in their life where they are vulnerable. When you are on the wrong place on the wrong time, someone can find out about that vulnerability and abuse it. If you want to know more about multi-level marketing, it is basically a pyramid scheme where you recruit distributors under you that you do not pay, but sell the items to the distributors so they can try to sell it with some margin, making less money as you go down the pyramid. The people high up in the pyramid will boast and flaunt how much money they make, and the people in the bottom of the pyramid see that as something to strive for and an achievable goal. But it is in the interest of everyone above you in the pyramid to keep you in your level, because the more people there are under you, the more money you make. And of course, you are kept in your lane through abuse and manipulation, while also giving you the false hope of one day climbing in the hierarchy. So why do I talk so much about cults in this video? I think we like to look at cults and see them as something that would never happen to us, while the tactics they use are all around us. The extreme cults we see in the media are an example of people that have mastered these techniques and can use them for exploitation. But there are a lot more or less benign communities that would still use excommunication if you speak badly about them publicly, or just have a dogmatic belief system that is frowned upon to question. Any community has their customs and traditions, and all communities use some level of manipulation to protect these traditions, even when they are questioned by well-meaning people. Defending the status quo is in a sense cult-like, and by this I'm just hoping that we can look at cult behavior more as a spectrum than something absolute. Okay, but to bring this all together and come back to the question I started with, what is power? I think power is in a sense privilege over another human being, whether this is obtained by having resources that the other requires, like money, information that the other doesn't want you to leak. It can be popularity, like on a social media platform. It can be status, it can be vulnerability or insecurity that you have. It can be socio-economic factor. Between any two random people, there is someone with more power, and I think it's important to talk about this. I think the person with power should take responsibility in starting the conversation and ask if the powerless person ever does anything that is uncomfortable to them, but doesn't say anything because they feel like they owe the person in power. I think it's important to say that you are aware of the power dynamic and that you want to be careful about it. Ultimately, we have all used these same tactics as these groomers in some points of our life. When you have a crush on a person, you might have showered them with attention, validation and gifts. Maybe you've pushed someone to disconnect from a friend that you thought had a bad influence on them. When someone told you they wanted to disconnect from you, you might have tried to negotiate with them and show them reasons to stay. You might have told people they can trust you, and they probably can trust you, but earning trust is one of the early tactics of groomers. You might have told people you can help when you weren't sure if you could. But does it really matter? I don't know. Maybe these tactics are just a tool, and the intentions are what matter. But then there are cults who genuinely believe that they have the best intentions and use abuse as a tool, so I really don't know. I watched a lot of documentaries about grooming and cults recently, and I found myself questioning my own intentions, or not even intentions, but maybe the tools I use for my good intentions. I know that my friends can trust me, but that's what a groomer would say too. I shower my friends with love, but that's what a groomer will do too. I tell my friends to disconnect from toxic people, but pushing to disconnect is a cult tactic. I've come to realize that in some of my friendships, I am the one with power, and some they are the one with power. I've come to realize that the people who have power over me, I don't always dare to speak my mind to. While the friends where I have more power, I find myself treading carefully because I don't want to influence them in a way that seems like I'm taking advantage of that power. I don't know if this topic is important to me because I have been victim of various kinds of abuse all my life. I don't know if I'm being paranoid about the concept of power and how that influences any relationship, private or professional. But I do think that a lot of abuse that happens can be prevented by talking about power and how to use that power responsibly. I think it's important to reflect on yourself and see what privileges you have and how that can be abused. I think it's important to look at relationships around you and remind people of the position of power that they are in and teach them to use that power responsibly. Lastly, I want to make a list of resources that I used to research this video. I lost count how many documentaries I watched on Scientology. It's really a rabbit hole, and it's a goldmine when you want to learn about how cults operate and what they can get away with. I think Scientology is the most successful cult. If I had to pick one documentary that gives the most information in one sitting, then it would be Going Clear and the Prison of Belief. However, Scientology feels so detached of anything I can relate to that I wanted to see some documentaries about cults that made me feel like I could have ended there if I was on a bad place on a bad time. And I found that in the group documentary, I can relate to the kids in the video and feel like that might very well have been me at that age. Another documentary that really touched me, but I haven't really talked about today, is this one about gay conversion therapy. I don't know, it's just sad to see that they're so ashamed by their religion that they can't accept their true self. And this is a YouTuber, Illuminati, who dedicates their channel to calling out scams, exploitation and multi-level marketing organization. Go follow them, it's really insightful. Then, I wanted to learn more about abusive individuals rather than organized. I watched a lot, but this documentary about grooming really shows what steps a groomer takes and how it builds up, and you only realize when it's too late. I stumbled upon a documentary about a place that might or might not be a cult. I really recommend it. But instead of wondering if they were a cult, I started to wonder, why aren't they a cult? What are they doing to convince us that they aren't a cult? Why do they want to convince us that they aren't a cult? How is the things that they post on TikTok any different from propaganda by Scientology? But then, how would you convince anyone that you aren't a cult even if you aren't? And then I wondered, what does it even mean to be a cult? Is it bad to be a cult? Aren't, in some ways, all communities a cult? And yeah, after I realized that I have a lot of trauma from the mental hospital, I think I went on a quest to find the meaning of all of it. What it means to be in a position where you have no power, what people in power are capable of to keep you in that place. And maybe it sounds whack, but I feel like society under capitalism is just different levels of prison. Freedom is a myth. In America, you can vote, but the liberals didn't stop abortion rights from being banned. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. We have no power. Power dynamics are everywhere. Manipulation is everywhere. I think that now I'm going through a phase of coming to terms with my own trauma. I have to tell myself that power isn't inherently evil, that manipulation isn't inherently evil. I think I have to tell myself that you have to be wary of power, but there are also a lot of good people who use the tools for good. Just by saying this, I can hear my abuser say, I am here to help you. And I know that it's very different from people who have actual good intentions. I don't know. I think I have to learn that deeds speak more loudly than words. And someone telling me that they want to help will be a red flag for a long time. But you know what? Just making this video and getting my thoughts out about what power is and how it can corrupt, it's really good for me. And if anyone watching this video gets something out of it, then that's amazing. But I think right now this is an outlet. If you made it to the end, thanks for watching. I know it was very ranty and maybe more personal than I planned. But yeah, I think this is an important topic, so thank you for listening to the whole story, and I'll see you next time.